Welcome to Zone In Sports, your favorite spot for real talk, bold takes, and everything in the zone when it comes to sports. From hard-hitting analysis of the Miami Hurricanes football to the hottest stories across the sports world, we're bringing you that energy, passion, and a little bit of swagger, just like the U. So whether you're tailgating in the Coral Gables or arguing in the group chats or just vibing in your way to work, buckle up. You're in the zone with your host, D. Hamp.
All righty out there, everybody. Today on Zone In Sports, we have the honor to be joined by one of the most respected coaches in Miami Hurricanes history. He spent over a decade on UM sidelines, coaching both linebackers and running backs, and helped develop some of the greatest talent ever to wear the orange and green. Names like Clinton Portis to Edgerrin James, Frank Gore, McGahee all came through his running back room. Known for his toughness, discipline, and passion for the game, he was the cornerstone of the Hurricanes dynasty years, a key figure in building the U legacy. Please welcome former Miami Hurricane coach, Don Soldinger. How's it going out there, Coach?
I'm doing good. Thanks to Win for introducing me, and I'm doing well. I'm hanging in there.
All right, we're just going to hop right into it. Coach, what originally brought you into coaching, and how did you end up at the University of Miami?
Very, very interesting. I played high school ball and got hurt. I got hurt in high school, got a real bad concussion. Got kind of depressed, couldn't play, couldn't take a scholarship. It was pretty bad. And I started to be a carpenter. And I was working in the summers here in Miami, pretty hot in Miami in the summers. It's not a good, I made a lot of money, but when I was in the union, but I said, I got to do something else. So I went and got my films from my the high school coach, sent them to C.W. Post up on Long Island. And they said, yeah, I think we can give you a scholarship, come on up, So I worked it all out, and I went up there, and when I got there, they said, "Well, you weren't accepted. You didn't get the letter." So I talked them into letting me stay for the semester. They only could come up with a quarter scholarship, and it was about $7,000 back then. That was like in the early '60s, so that was expensive, real expensive. So I got a 3.0 GPA, transferred to Memphis State, and came back, and my head coach was an assistant principal at a high school, introduced me to the head coach there. And I just started, coaching, in 1968 at Carl Park and just stayed in the county, and I started on defense my first 9 years. And, and then finally I worked my way up, got a job at Southridge High School, one of the top programs in the country. As a matter of fact, if you're from the Midwest, a guy, Troy Davis.
Yeah.
Played for me in high school and played at Iowa State. He was fabulous there. I ran into a guy in Boston, and I said, "Oh, you're from Iowa? Yeah, Troy Davis." Troy Davis, sure, I know.
Yeah.
And Darren went there, and a few people. So that's how it started, and that's I just did really well. Won a couple of state championships, and never applied for a job at Miami. All of a sudden, I get a call from Howard Schnellenberger after they won the national championship. We had just lost the state championship, and he asked me, "Hey, would you like to come coach at Miami? Mike Archer's going to LSU. Want to make Olivadotti the coordinator, Tom Olivadotti. He's going to coach the secondary. How about you coming in and coaching linebackers?" I thought about it about 5 minutes. I said, "Sure." Yeah, I'll come. And I had a great team coming back. They went back to the state playoffs, lost in the state playoffs again in high school. But that's how it happened. I never applied for the job. I just had a pretty good reputation. Howard offered me the job, and I took it, and I don't regret it. It was I was a fan. Really, I grew up. I was raised in Miami, born on Miami Beach, and raised here. So I followed Miami since I was a kid. So it was a
That's
thrill.
great.
Yeah.
All right. You coach both linebackers and running backs at Miami, two very distinct positions, different positions. How did you approach coaching each group?
Well, my first game, I was coaching against Auburn in the Kickoff Classic. That was Jimmy's first game. We were playing Auburn, who was ranked number 1 in the country. They had 3 pretty good running backs. They had Tommy Agee, Brent Fullwood from St. Cloud, Florida, and a guy called Bo Jackson. And that was my first game I coached, and I was coaching inside linebackers in a base 50 defense.
Mm-hmm.
Held them to 78 yards and beat them in that game. And that was Jimmy's first game. So that was a thrill for me. So, I was coaching linebackers for a while. And after the 2 years, they didn't have anybody with tight ends. And we had a pretty sophisticated passing game. And Gary Stevens asked me, "You want to come over and coach the tight ends?" I said, "Sure," because I wanted to learn a little bit more about offense. So I went over and coached tight ends. So I coached linebackers for 2 years here, and then went over and coached tight ends. And Jimmy was, I was just looking at the records here, and I believe Jimmy was like 52-9 maybe when he was here.
Something like that, yeah,
something like that, and we just won a lot of games, man. I mean, it was a lot of fun. I never walked into a stadium when I coached at Miami, whether it was with Jimmy, Butch, or Larry, and I never thought we'd lose. I mean, I always thought we'd had a chance to win.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
You've been around some legendary names, which was like coaching. What was it like coaching with Jimmy and Butch Davis? What was the differences, and what did you like? And give me a little insight on them.
Jimmy, I say this all the time. Jimmy's the best. Jimmy's a bottom line guy. He's a very intense guy. When he got here, it was a very tough time because what happened, Howard left. Howard hired me and then left. I didn't get to coach a season with Howard. He left that spring. So Jimmy didn't have a spring practice. And the AD hired Jimmy, and he came in, and a lot of the coaches on the staff, a lot of the assistant coaches wanted that head job. So when Jimmy came in, he wasn't accepted by those guys. As a matter of fact, one of the guys was dropping his key. It was Jimmy when he was first introduced to us. We're at the airport Marriott in a conference room, and as Jimmy was talking, he was just dropping his keys. Jimmy had to keep his cool. Jimmy's just a very squared away guy. I love working for him, because you knew if you weren't doing your job, you knew it. And if you were doing your job, he gave you enough rope to make sure that you were doing the right thing. If you were doing the right thing, he wouldn't bother you. But he was great to work for. One of the best I've worked for, without a doubt. I kind of said it. I kind of hit the lottery, with working for great coaches and coaching great players. Butch, on the other end, was a great recruiter. I worked with Butch. Butch was an assistant with Jimmy, then went to Dallas with Jimmy, then came back. And again, I didn't apply for the job. Butch called me up, said, "You want to come in and coach running backs?" They always had a guy from South Florida, a high school coach, like Joe Brodsky, Portis, Harold Allen, somebody that was local that knew the landscape of Miami. So Butch asked me to come back, and I did. It was a mess when he got there. And Butch doesn't get enough credit, by the way. He brought that program back it was in dire straits. They were talking about dropping the program.
Right,
and
yeah.
He, got real creative with recruiting. He's a great evaluator of talent. Put together a great staff like Jimmy did. And we just started winning. And he just, great players. And, Reggie Waynes and Tanner Moss and Andre Johnson. I mean, all the players you see on that 2001. As a matter of fact, I'll show you real quick. These are some of the players that he had. That's the players that were sitting in my room in 2001. Frank Gore at the bottom. That's Quatrin Hill was the fullback.
Yeah.
Was a fullback on the team. He was a young guy. Both those guys were young guys. This guy, the other guy's a walk-on. Then it was Kyle Cobia, who was hurt. He played for Bill Castle at Lakeland. Then that's Davenport, McGahee, Portis, and Jared Payton, Walter Payton's son.
Man, that's interesting.
That's sitting in the room in 2001.
Right.
So, those are the kind of players we were recruiting. That room was stacked. Matter of fact, we talked about it a little bit on that Nevin Shapiro that Willis wanted to transfer. He was the first year he wanted to go to Auburn. And I called his mom up, and I said, he wants a transfer. And, of course, Janie, runs the show. So he didn't transfer and had the greatest season of any Hurricane. But Butch was great to work for too. And he really brought the program back from dire straits. And then he left, and Larry took over, and we won with his kids. I walked the campus for 3 years, Dwayne, and we didn't lose a game 3 years.
Now you didn't coach under Dennis Erickson, right?
No, I didn't go. Dennis Erickson let me go.
Right, yeah. We talked a little bit about
that. Tommy Tupperville, and myself. Jimmy took the rest of those guys to Dallas. I didn't want to leave because my wife had a good job, had her own business here, and we had some real estate and things like that. So I stayed. So Erickson let me go, went back to Southridge. I got my job back and won 2 state championships. And that's when Troy played for me, Troy Davis. And, and then when Erickson left, Jimmy went to Dallas, then Erickson stayed, won a couple of national championships, then left. The program was kind of a messed up program. There was some Pell Grant situations and things like that. And that's when Butch came back and really did a great job. And he asked me to come back and help him. And I left, we lost the state championship in '94, and I started coaching there in '95, until 2005.
So it's fair to
Butch
say
was great too. Great guy to work for.
So it's fair to say you and Dennis Erickson don't have a relationship.
Well, I know Dennis and everything else, but hey, I told him when he called me, and I knew it's a long story, but I knew I was getting let go because I was told that early. I don't know how those guys knew that because they, but anyway, and I just told Dennis, I said, well, you're going to have to deal with me because I'm going to be in high school and I'm going to have some pretty good teams. Matter of fact, the team that won the state championship in '93, we won the state championship 69-36 in Florida. We beat Manatee. And that's the Troy Davis. Lamont Green was USA Today Player of the Year. He just passed, by the way. And but it was a great team. And I said, you're going to have to be dealing with me, and I'm going to have some good athletes. So this ugly situation, you want to kind of smooth it over,
Right.
It is what it is. I knew that would happen. I knew that could happen.
Right.
College football is funny, man. And think about it, Dwayne, 158, I think in 32, something like that. 38. Okay. I think it was 158 and 38. That was the record in the 16 years that we coached together.
Wow.
That's all those guys. That's, so went to 14 bowl games. All we did was win,
Yeah, that's crazy.
Yeah.
All right. The U is known for producing elite running backs. Of course, you talked about the ones that was in your room with Clinton all the way down to Edgerrin. What was it like coaching that stable of talent?
Felt like John Wooden when John Wooden was at UCLA coaching guys. They just kept winning. Super competitive, I would say. It was a great day. I told the kids, and it's funny, I was telling McGahee, McGahee wanted to leave because Gore came in and everybody was doing well. I said, hey, you're going to get an opportunity. I don't know when it's going to come. You'll get your opportunity. But I said, every one of you guys can play pro ball. That's how good you are. I said, I can't it's not fair to just give one kid a shot and while the other kids watch. I said, I'm going to teach you the game, and when you get your opportunity, make it count. That's what I told them, and it was a super, super competitive room. Each guy had something a little different. The guy that probably got hurt the most was Davenport. Davenport was a great tailback.
Yeah, he was big and physical too.
Physical, could block, could catch, could run. Just smart. And great kid, and they moved him to fullback, and he caught touchdown passes. He was instrumental in a lot of our games, but he wanted to be the tailback, and he wasn't. And he's not very happy. It was hard to smooth that over, but it's about winning. And of course, he won a Super Bowl with Pittsburgh, so he did really well. So it was very competitive, Dwayne. Real super competitive. That's why we were good.
Well, that kind of tails into the next question. Fans often say the early 2000 Canes had the greatest roster ever assembled. From your perspective, what made this team so special?
you know, it's funny. They'll say it to you that they kind of police themselves,
Mm.
but we kind of encourage that. To me, the great teams, they don't let people slack. You know what I'm saying? The players know who's doing the right things and not doing the right things,
Hmm.
and they kind of made a commitment to win, and anything that got in that way of winning, they corrected. You know, and but what we kind of encouraged that, you know, from the top down, you know, from Butch, Larry, we wanted them to police themselves, and that's what happened. That's why they were good. Probably, and I was asked on this other podcast I did, what was the only team that could compete with the 2001 team? They talk about that LSU team. The only team I think that even come close to competing with the 2001 team is the one that lost to Penn State in the Fiesta Bowl. That
Mm.
team with Vinny Testaverde and Alonzo Highsmith, Jerome Brown, and those guys.
Right.
That was a great football team.
Right.
Great team. I mean, I think in the Penn State game, they got like 145 yards. We got like 460.
Mm.
Vinny threw 5 interceptions, and you know, Alonzo had like 200 yards rushing, and at the end, they put it in Vinny's hands, and he threw the pick at the end. We were going in to score. But if that team had won that game, they might have been considered the greatest team of the century.
Right.
But they could compete with the 2001. I don't know who would win. Probably a 2001. Heck, I think there were 19 number 1 round draft choices.
Yeah, it's crazy. We have this debate all the time where people get upset. They try to compare the LSU with Joe Burrow and Chase and them, and they believe that they would have beat those early 2000 Kane teams. And I'm like, I don't think so. What's your perspective on that for you? That LSU team?
No, LSU was good. I mean, Ed Ogeron, who coached that team, Ed's at practice all the time now.
Mm-hmm.
He has a place on Miami Beach. And Ed was a GA when we were there. And he does a great job. That was a great team, but I don't think that they could, there are too many guys. I mean, you talk about all the guys that got drafted off that team. I mean, it's like a pro team almost.
Yeah.
It's they all play pro ball. And there's a bunch of Hall of Famers and things like that. You know, Frankie will be a Hall of Famer. Reed was a Hall of Famer. I mean, there's a bunch of guys that could play, man.
Yeah,
I don't think anybody can touch that team. That was a great football team.
Yeah, I agree. What are some of your most favorite memories or stories for the time with the Hurricanes, your whole time with the Canes?
Well, the first game I coached in was a thrill for me, coaching against Bo Jackson, coaching linebackers against that team. They were ranked number 1. I sort of got the first time I coached in college, I was 40 years old. I wasn't a young coach. I was coaching high school for 21 years. I coached high school ball for 21 years here. I was a high school coach. That was a great thrill, coaching against holding Bo Jackson to 78 yards and beating them on Jimmy's first win. But there's so many things. Probably the things. It's funny you asked that. You know what I think about? I think about the national championships we lost. The Cleveland Gary fumble.
Yeah.
Notre Dame.
Yeah.
He doesn't fumble, which he didn't.
Right, he didn't.
He didn't. Should have been a touchdown or a first down. We win that game. We won a national championship. The Ohio State game.
No pass interference.
The wives were on the field.
Yeah.
Fireworks were going off. Everybody my wife says, you won another one. She's hugging me and everything else. All of a sudden, flag comes out.
Yeah.
That's another one. And then the Sugar Bowl, Tennessee. Tennessee whacked us pretty good in the Sugar Bowl. If we had beaten Tennessee in the Sugar Bowl, we were right up for another one. But some of the throws were like beating Florida 6 times in a row. FSU, kind of whipped us around for a while. We beat them, and 3 or 4 times in a row, and things like that. So the state rivalries were big things.
Take us inside of some of those state rivalries playing Florida and Florida State. Some of the matchups and the intensity that, even from the coaches' perspectives, with Bowden and those guys and Spurrier and some of them.
Well, I knew all those guys because they all recruited my school.
Okay.
I knew Spurrier, I knew all the coaches up there, and I keep in touch with some of them still. Matter of fact, how I learned the running back play, I went to Florida A&M University for 6 springs and 2 summers. Rudy Hubbard was the head coach. He coached at Ohio State with Woody Hayes. He won the national championship at Florida A&M. And he coached running backs, and he recruited Archie Griffin. And Freddie Goldsmith was his defensive coordinator. And I went to elementary school with Freddie and coached with Freddie when I first started coaching in '68. And Freddie was a defensive coordinator on those teams that won the national championship. So I took my staff up there. He taught me the game. It was a Ohio State running game, but he taught me the running back play, and that's where I learned that, because I was a defensive coach most of my life, and that really helped. That really spurred my career on.
We had a question that was in the chat. Somebody wants to know, why didn't coaches want Jimmy Johnson there when he first got there?
Howard was so popular, Howard came in, and if you really look at Howard's resume and record, it's stellar. He was the offensive coordinator on the Dolphins' undefeated team. Then he came in. If he would have stayed, he got in a riff with Sam Jankovich, the AD. He hired me and left in the spring because they got, they butted heads, and he was going to go to a new pro league. But Howard was super popular after beating Nebraska. That team was considered, the one he beat in the Orange Bowl, was considered one of the top teams in the country. Right. Or in the century. They said that might have been the best team ever. And, he beat him on at the end, 31-30. And he was super popular. And Jimmy came in, and nobody really knew Jimmy. Mm-hmm. Jimmy hadn't really established. He was at Oklahoma State. He'd been to I think he went to the Blue Bonnet Bowl and a couple of bowl games. And, Oklahoma was the team really there.
Right.
And so Jimmy came in, nobody really knew him, and when he came in, and he wasn't able to bring his staff with him. So at the first year, it was very frustrating for me as an assistant coach. I'm a ball coach. I just wanted Jimmy to say, hey, talk to me, tell me what you want to do, and let's go to work. That's
right.
I didn't care about money. I didn't care about anything. I care about just coaching ball and helping him win games. And doors were closed. Everybody was bad mouthing him. I'm talking coaches and stuff. And it was a very tough time, because Howard was so popular. But Jimmy immediately after the 8-5 season, that was his first season, he brought some of his people, and he brought Dave in, and Tony Wise was there, and Butch came, and he brought some people from Oklahoma State. Wound up keeping me and a few other people on the staff. Gary Stevens, who was an excellent coach. Hubbard Alexander, who he took to Dallas with him. Joe Brodsky, he kept. So he kept a good nucleus and brought some of his people, changed the defense, and off to the races. I think he won. I think he lost 5 games his first year, maybe 4 games after that, or something like that. But he was fabulous. Unbelievable psychologist. He loved the kids. He loved the area. And he came in, and there was a big riff, with when we played Penn State in the Fiesta Bowl. He was I think in Japan or somewhere. He was doing something and was meeting us there. And the kids came in the fatigues, in the battle fatigues.
Oh, yeah.
And it was a big riff. And he had butted heads with the president a little bit, and they didn't want to renew his contract. And big mistake, because he's as good as it gets. Jimmy Johnson, psychologically, how he approaches it, how he works with people. I mean, he gets into your head. He's really excellent. I mean, as good as it gets.
That's crazy. Oh, that's good, though. What qualities did you look for in a running back or linebacker that separated a good player from a great player?
We had a thing, and I can't put my hands on it right now, but I have a thing that we put out for recruiting. and it has athletic ability, and then it has a bunch of stuff listed under athletic ability and academics and all that. I look at character, the first thing to me, if a kid's the right, I'm an old school guy. If the kid's the right kind of kid, he has good character, has good values, he's not afraid of working hard, he's not afraid of competing, wants to learn, and things like that. Those are the things I look. I used to go not only look at kids when they practice on the field and see, how they were athletically. I would go to the weight room and watch them in a weight room. I would go, I'd see how he responded with other kids. I'd really watch him on the sidelines, how he talked, how he was with his teammates. I wanted somebody that had a stellar character. Obviously, they have to have good athletic ability, but
Right.
but if you combine that with great character, with loyalty and all the things that sometimes are not going on right now, that's what I was looking for. And you take a look at our kids. I mean, 10 guys I coached that placed in the league. You don't place guys in the league unless they have the right attitude.
Right.
They all wanted they all wanted to be successful. They all were hard workers. They had great character and they worked hard. It was a pleasure coaching them, and that's what I looked at. And that's what I stress. I have a thing called Attitude of a Champion, and it has 8 characteristics on it. And I give it to all my athletes, and that's what I'm concerned with. If they have the right attitude, I can develop them talent-wise.
Okay. For the guys out there, do you have a list of those 8 players so these guys can know these 8 players that you put in the league or that you coached and helped get in the league?
Do I have a list of them?
Yeah. Do you know them off the top of your head?
Well, I'm looking at the 2001 Davenport, McGahee, Portis, Peyton, Gore, Edgerrin, James. The other guys were, of course, I recruit the two players were from high school. Cedric Urban and Troy Davis both played in the league. Quatron Hill played in the league. Derek Harris was a fullback. Nick Williams, the other fullback, played for Cincinnati. And I think Daniel Ferguson played for a while in the league.
Oh, that's amazing.
So all those guys had an opportunity. James Jackson.
Yeah, James Jackson. Forgot about James. Yeah, I like James Jackson.
James was a good ball player.
Yeah, he was.
Yeah.
How did you balance discipline with letting players express themselves?
It's funny. Everybody. If a kid messed up, college football is a full-time job.
Yeah,
I mean a full-time job. I don't mind players getting paid now. I mean, I think it's a little bit off the charts right now. It's went a little bit too far. They should. They have. They should get paid. To a certain extent, but. You had to be, you think about it. You get up, you got to be in a training room, if you're hurt. You got to go to class, okay? You got to be at practice. You got to go to study hall. You got to lift weights. So during the season, your day is right up from the time you get up to the time you go to bed. You got something to do. It's more than an 8-hour day, I guarantee you. So anyway, if kids were missing stuff, you'd get papers, James Jackson, nicest kid in the world, great kid, not surly, good kid, love him, always smile on his face, that type of kid. Right. Always had a smile on his face. I get a paper. He missed study hall. So I call him in the office and say, hey, James, what happened? She says, I forgot about it, and something came up and I'll take care of it. I said, okay. They usually guys run if you miss something,
Right.
3 days later, missed the training room, overslept. He overslept. He started, and then he missed study hall again, missed class. I said, wait a minute. I called, hey, James. I said, I got like 3 or 4 different things. I said, let me tell you what I'm going to do. I said, I'm not going to run you because you can run all day. He says, I'm going to start dropping letters of your last name. Every time I get a paper, I'm going to drop a letter. And I said, when all the letters are gone, I said, I won't even know who you are, bro.
That's interesting.
So he was walking down the hall, and I said, hey, On, how you doing? He said, On? Yeah. I said, you lost all those letters. You got 2 left. Don't mess up anymore.
Mm,
And that's what he did. He got squared away pretty quick.
that's interesting. I guarantee you the point got across, though.
They got a little different than running. They can run all day, you know.
Right. Do you think that the way running backs are developed today is different than from what you taught the game, or basically the same?
No, matter of fact, the guy at Miami now, I love the guy. His name Matt Merritt.
Yeah.
Excellent coach, man. Just an excellent guy. You know, he stems the whole thing like I did from character. You know, you got to make sure you're doing the right thing, and you know, he teaches the game. Unbelievable student of the game. Teaches the players the right thing, and he has a pretty competitive room right now. You know, when you said to Fletcher and Lyle and Marty Brown, you know, from North Dakota State, and he has the Humphreys.
Yeah,
You know,
Humphreys.
Yeah, he has him, and he has one other guy that I think that he has like 5 guys that can play. They're very similar to the room I had, and you know, I think right now, I think Lyle might be had got a little dinged up in the first.
Yeah, I think he's supposed to play today.
I hope he's okay, you know, because Lyle's on it. And Mario's done a great job recruiting these guys, and Coach Merritt's done a great job because they're character kids. They're really good character kids, and they're kind of old school kids. Mm-hmm. They really get behind each other as they want to see each other succeed. You know, they don't. It's a real competitive, but they're real tight, and they want each other to do really well. In other words, if somebody else is having a good, they celebrate that, you know, and I think that's a big key. You know, when you can celebrate your teammates' successes, and I think that's what Coach Merritt does. Great guy. Mario's done a great job recruiting a lot of good character kids.
Yes, that's great. Well, that brings us to the next one. Looking at Mario's program now, what do you think Miami needs to do to get back on the national stage, or do you think they already back on the national stage?
You got to think of what's important now. What important now, WIN, win, bro. This town, if you don't win, you ain't gonna. People are going to criticize you.
Yeah.
Heck, we were when we got fired in 2005, we were 9-3 and lost 2 games by like 3 points. You know, I mean, I lost 1 game by 2 points and 1 game by 1 point, and we, you know, we were right there, and all we did was win. I mean, that's all we were doing, you know. And we were 9-3. I mean, you got to win in this town, and that's what he's got to do. I thought it was last year when I was a little disappointed, and I love the defensive coordinator, but they gave up too many explosive plays.
Yeah.
And you got to fix that. You know, you got to call a guy and say, hey, let's keep everything inside you, everything in front of you, and you're going to be pretty good if you do that defensively. So, you know, I just I thought it was last year with Ward, but you know, this year is going to be. This guy Beck is pretty good.
He's pretty good, really good.
They got a great offensive line. Their defense, I love what Heatherman's doing. I'm telling you what, Mario went away. You know, he was a GA with us. He coached with me. We recruited him. He got like a sabbatical. He went away and got a sabbatical in football. You know, working for, you know, he did his time at FIU, wound up going to Alabama. Got the head job at Oregon, you know, back to Miami. He knows what he's doing. I mean, he has a plan, and he's gotten great coaches. I think has the money behind him, which Miami really never had money behind him. Matter of fact, I made more money going back to high school than I was making at Miami. I mean, there was our coaches were not paid very well, and, but he's got everything behind him now, and. Great group of coaches, great group of kids, and they just got to stay focused and win. I was telling Nevin Shapiro, who kind of got us in trouble a little bit. I said, if you ran over me, I wouldn't even know who you were when I was at Miami. I was so focused. I wanted my kids focused. I was focused on winning football games, and I didn't want any outside distractions on the kids. You know,
Right.
and in Miami, you can get a lot of outside distractions. And
Yeah.
so I really demanded a lot from the kids to stay focused. Winning is the name of the game in Miami.
Yeah, it's interesting that you say that. And Mario took a little heat from people that be in my chat because when we're talking about last year, they thought that he probably should have made a change with Lance Gitry at some point in the season. What's your take on coaches getting rid of coordinators mid-season? It doesn't happen a lot in college football.
I was a head coach in high school, and my defense coordinator was fabulous. My defensive coordinator was a Franklin and Marshall graduate. He got 1590 on the SAT. Very smart guy, and he had a guy that was coaching defensive ends. And he comes to me, he says, "I want to fire this guy. He's not getting the job done." I said, "Wait a minute." I said, "That guy's a great guy. He's great with the kids. He's telling the kids the right thing. You know, he's not a detriment. You know, he's not drinking. He's not on drugs. I mean, he's doing the right thing by the kids and everything else." I said, "I'll take him on offense and get you a guy. I'll send somebody over there for defensive end." In other words, and that guy did a great job for us on offense. And he did a great job with the kids. In other words, to me, my whole thing with Gidry, if you ever sat down with Lance Gidry, great guy. I mean, a great guy. But the bottom line is get it done. Keep him out of the end zone. So I would have called Gidry in and say, "Hey, come on, man. How do we fix this? Let's how can we fix it?" He's not going to, you know, I don't think he's going to go against what you say. I mean, you go in and say, "Hey, we got to do this, this, and this. Let's get this done. Let's get it fixed." And you talk to him. You know, at the end of the season, if it just doesn't work out, then you can let him go or something. You know, that's fine. Go somewhere, which happened.
Right.
You know, and Heatherman came in, but no, I wouldn't. You know, that guy's a good guy, and I think if they sat down and talked about it a little bit more, I think they could have fixed that. It's not hard to fix that.
Right.
I mean, you know, the first thing I learned as a young coach in high school, keep everything inside and keep everything in front, and you're probably going to win most of your games. Heck, for the first 9 years I played, I don't even think I ever played cover 2. We played cover 3. We played a zone the whole time. Even when we blitzed, we played zone. Played like zone 5. And you know, nobody beat us deep or anything else. Yeah, they completed some passes and things like that, but you're always going to have a shot if you keep everything inside and everything in front.
Interesting. How do you feel about the evolution? And we talked a little bit about this earlier. How do you feel about the evolution of college football, transfer portal, NIL, and recruiting today compared to your era?
Wow.
No, a mouthful.
What was totally illegal is legal now.
Yeah.
You know, it's a little off the charts because it's even happening. I don't know how it is in Missouri and some of the places around, but what's happened in the state of Florida, kids can go anywhere they want in high school at any time they want.
It's crazy.
So if you discipline a kid and you know, you like, I would sit kids down if they didn't do their homework in high school. You know, I'd send a progress report around, and if a teacher said, "Well, he's not turning his homework," I'd talk to the kid, "Get your homework done." If he didn't turn it in, he was in the stands watching the game. Well, that kid then, you know, if I did that now, adios. He'd be at another school and could play immediately. Usually, if you transferred schools, you had to sit out a year.
Right.
You know, so in Dade County, you can play football at one school, basketball at another school, track at another school, and come back to your other school and play football again. You can do anything anytime you want. That's crazy. Exactly right.
Because didn't it happen with Teddy Bridgewater just getting suspended? I read yesterday, but the quarterback, he left and going to American Heritage or something like that. I just read yesterday.
The quarterback.
Yeah, the quarterback that he had.
The Chaminade, I think.
Yeah. He's leaving wherever he's at now.
I thought he went to Chaminade, but anyway.
Well, he went somewhere.
And what happened with Teddy Bridgewater, I think, that's crazy.
Yeah.
That guy was just trying to help inner city kids. Are you kidding me?
Yeah.
He wasn't. That's not to me. That he's just trying to help the inner city kid. You know, I mean, those guys don't have transportation. Sometimes they don't have they don't eat meals, and he's just trying to help the guy out. I'm not big on what happened to him either, because that's happening all over and nobody says anything.
Yeah.
He put it on, he put it on social media, and bingo, it blows up, and he's a bad guy. Teddy Bridgewater is a really sharp guy.
Yeah.
And so, and he cares about the kids.
Yeah.
And so, no, we're going to kick him out and put him in, he goes back to the league. I think that's crazy. And what's happening in college is the same thing. I was at a booster function right before the Notre Dame game, and Mel Bratton was there, Lamar Thomas was there, all the older players had come back. Toretta was there, and these guys a lot of guys that are in the UM collective. That's the people that are paying these kids.
Mm-hmm.
Were there, and I'm saying, hey. I raised my hand because they were talking about the money and how they're doing it, and that every kid's getting paid, some getting more than others and everything. And I'm not opposed to paying the guys. I'm opposed to the amount they're paying. Where can you get $4 million and you never did anything yet?
True.
You know what I'm saying? You never even done anything. So I raised my hand. I said, you know what? It's a little bit off base. Here's this kid getting $4 million, and I'm coaching getting $40,000. What's wrong with that picture?
Mm.
I'm helping that kid become the kind of kid that he's supposed to be, and I'm getting $40,000, and he's making $4 million, and ain't even played yet.
Mm.
Go figure that one out. You know what I'm saying? That kind of bothers me. And then going from one school to another at any time, you got two free agencies. You got free agencies before fall, you got free agencies after spring, you got free after the season. You got three, actually. They can go anywhere they want, anytime they want. So something's got to be done. Dwayne, I was listening to ESPN. Dabo Sweeney and Belichick were talking about this, and they were talking about, especially Dabo Sweeney was saying there has to be some kind of parameters. Mm-hmm. Even in the pros, they got a cap.
Yeah.
You got to put a cap on, and you got to do something. I'm not saying don't pay the kids, because it's more than a full-time job. They're not like regular students. Any way you slice it,
right?
They're busting their tail, But let's be realistic. You just don't throw money around like that.
It's interesting because I know here in Missouri, it's a little different. If you're in a private school, of course, they could transfer anywhere.
Sure.
Public schools, well, it's a difference. If you stay in St. Louis City, you can go to any school. If you stay in St. Louis County, which is the suburbs, you have to stay in that school district if you're a public school. But people obfuscate that by getting addresses and things of that nature. But if you do transfer, technically, you're supposed to sit out, I think it's half a year, if I'm not mistaken. But yeah, they do make you sit out a season, basically.
Well, here's the thing. When I was in high school, I think there's a saying, it takes a village to raise a kid.
Mm-hmm.
It takes a whole village to raise a kid. So I wanted the people in my community. I want to be a community school. I didn't want kids coming from outside, 15, 20 miles away, and then going. And then after I coach them, they leave. Yeah. I wanted the kids in that community and the parents in that community to get behind the kids.
Right.
We would have pregame meals. They would come in and serve the kids.
Mm-hmm.
So the kids knew the parents were behind them.
Right.
And I stress the academics and things. So it takes a village, a whole village, to raise kids and do the right thing by kids. And I don't think that's happening now. Your kids are playing. I don't think kids know each other really. They're playing on the same team. I said, who the offensive guard is? I don't know his name.
Right.
I'm going to a thing in Ocala, the 5th, 6th, and 7th, or 6th, 7th, and 8th. And it's guys I played ball with in high school, and I graduated in 1962, and I keep in touch with those guys. We're going 25 guys and cheerleaders and everybody coming back to this thing at a guy's house. We're having it at this guy's house. He has a ranch in Ocala, and we've stayed tight all these years. I don't think that happens anymore.
No.
Kids don't even know who they're playing with.
Yeah, you see it especially at a lot of I would say a lot of guys. I don't know if you're familiar with East St. Louis up here. They play on a national stage, but a lot of those guys, they're not from East St. Louis. They're from the St. Louis area, and they go over there. Some of them guys don't even go back to the area or give back because they're not from that area. They play on a state championship, but how genuine is it if you're not even from the area? So
Wayne, I don't know how East St. Louis is now, but when we recruited, we recruited guys from East St. Louis.
Yeah,
like a war zone sometimes. This is back in the 80s.
Yeah,
80, 89, 90. It was bad at one time. East St. Louis.
It's still bad.
It's still bad.
It got much better.
It was a rough area, man.
Yeah.
And they had pretty good football players coming out of there.
It's crazy because if you drive through there, the area looks wrecked. And then they got this big, beautiful high school. And it's like, the disconnect is something else.
It's a disconnect. Yeah.
Yeah.
It is.
But we'll move on. If you were coaching today, what would you emphasize most to young players trying to make it to the next level?
Don't be afraid to compete. I said this on the Nevin's Bureau. I went to a kid's house in Pahokee with Mario. And the kid was a pretty good ball player, real good running back. A little small, but really good. I walked into the house. First thing he asked me, he said, "Hey, coach, who do you got in your room?" I don't talk to kids that ask me that question. I said, "I'm here because I think you can play. I wouldn't be here in your house if I didn't think you could compete with the kids I got." But I said, the only thing I'm going to give you is an opportunity. So I want guys that are not afraid to compete against guys that have good character, that are willing to work, that are loyal, that are going to bust their tail. It's easy to coach guys that want to go to the next level. And plus, I want guys that want to go to the next level. It's easy to develop that talent because they do what you ask them to do. They're not afraid of working hard. And that's what I want. I don't want guys that want something for nothing. Who's sitting in your room? What's the difference? You think you're good enough to play? That's why we're here, and that's what I want. I want guys that think they can compete. And that as long as they have an opportunity, as long as they get an opportunity, I'll show you what I can do. That's what I'm like. Missouri, show me.
Yeah.
Show me.
It's interesting because, I think it's a disconnect because of generations too, because I'm more like you. A lot of people that follow me, they know I wrestled in high school and I played football in high school, but I blew my knee out my junior year, and surgeries back then were way different than, of course, the surgeries now. So, but I did wind up wrestling in college in JUCO. Oh. But coming from a wrestler background, you had to compete for a starting position.
Right.
At any time, somebody could walk in the wrestling room. Hey, I want to challenge him for his spot. So you kind of learn that. You had to compete, but today's age, it's just like football. Guys get challenged. They want to transfer to a different university. They don't want to. Some of them, not all. It's just a switch. And I'm not blaming the kids. Some of it got to do with the money. They get offered more money to leave, more playing time, ESPN being televised games. It's a lot of nuances into it, which I just don't know the answer to those questions. To make kids understand that it's bigger than that money, because I look at the Nico guy that left Tennessee that's over at UCLA, and he over there getting his head beat in. They gave him more money, but
well, that's the landscape now.
Yeah.
But the thing is, you talk about that. My whole thing is, you can win. Talent will win you a lot of games. Character will win you championships. Talent and character will win you championships. So, if you're talented and you just you go with the breeze, you go wherever it's the easiest, you're never going to develop. See, to me, it's developing talent. Russell Maryland, when he came into Miami, was to weigh 350. When he was wearing, he used to wear those grays, the gray. His belly would hang over the grays. And Randy Shannon, you'd walk in, you'd come in early in the morning, you'd be looking, and Randy Shannon this is when Randy played at Miami, had Russell Maryland out there running in the morning. He woke him up early and ran him till he ran all that fat off and everything. He became an Outland Trophy and the #1 round draft choice.
Right.
That's, Russell Maryland's a good athlete and a great character kid. And that's why we won. Yeah. Guys like that. You know what I'm saying? We had a bunch of guys like that.
Yeah.
A ton of guys that were great character kids that weren't afraid of working hard. Mel Bratton, Alonzo Highsmith. I can go on and on. Mike Irvin, Benny Blades. You can go on and on with kids. It's just we had a stellar kids that worked. It was an honor for me to work at University of Miami. Believe me.
That's great. So now, was it hard to manage the running back room with so much talent? Would everybody want to compete for touches? Yeah. Was that difficult for you, or?
It was a challenge, and a guy like Portis, Portis is coaching at Delaware State now. I just put a little packet together for him and gave it to him, and they're doing good. They're 1-1. They lost to Delaware the first game, but Portis could be a pain in the neck.
How so?
He would walk in the room. He says, "Which one of you guys could be blocking for me?" He talked to the kids at Miami. This is an interesting thing. Portis talked to the kids at Miami. He says. And he's talking, and he's going through. He says, "How many of you guys are backups?" And so a bunch of kids raised their hand, and he says, "That's your problem." He says, "If somebody asked me that," he said, "I'd never raise my hand." And it's true. That's the way competitors believe. If you talk to Davenport, "Hey, I'm getting screwed. I'm playing fullback. I'm just as good as those guys." And if you look at his early time running the tailback, you'd say, "Why did you move that guy to fullback?" And McGahee, "I want to play, man. You give me my opportunity, I'll show you."
Right.
And so, it was always a competitive thing. And McGahee got his opportunity. Now, true, the room wasn't like the 2001 room with 6 guys that were in there.
Right.
It was less guys, and he had his opportunity. And he had the best year of any running back. I think he had 1,700 plus yards, 26 touchdowns. Should have won the Heisman Trophy probably.
Yeah.
He had that kind of year. But that's my point. When you get your opportunity, see what happens with a lot of kids, even with the running back room, if they don't get their opportunity right away, they get discouraged. So when they do get their opportunity, they'll make a mental mistake. They'll do something. But I told my kids, I said, make sure your effort's always there. You're giving 100% effort, and you don't make any mentals. And when you get your opportunity, make it count. And that's the way it is. Were they happy about it? No. I said, there's only one ball. You can't cut it up. I said, but you'll get your opportunity. I don't know when it's coming. And I look at a guy like Jared Payton. He wasn't like those other guys. He played soccer mostly in his in his time, in high school in Chicago. But he got his opportunity. He went to FSU. He was the only guy that went up to FSU and got 100 yards. Then he came back in the bowl game when we played him in the bowl game. We beat him 16-14. He was the MVP of the bowl game, and he got 100 yards. So he got 100 yards against both teams, and it was the MVP of the bowl game.
Wow.
So, he got his opportunity, and he made it happen. And that was the key. And that's all I ask. Give it your best effort. Don't make mental mistakes. Be ready when your number's called. And that's what, that's how valuable you are to the team. And I said, all of you will contribute. And most of them did really well in special teams too. Jimmy always did this. When I was a special teams coordinator from 2005 to 2005, Jimmy always had 2 starters. Starters playing on 2 special teams. They had to play on.
That's interesting because you don't see that a lot now.
You don't see it a whole lot, but you know what? It's about winning. It's about and McGahee said something on that podcast. He says, "I see you put me there, and I got hurt on the kickoff." I said, "Bro," it just makes you better. If you're a lot of those guys that go to the pros, their first couple of years, they better be playing special teams, or they ain't going to have a job. If you go to the pros, So that's all I was concerned. I wanted to make sure each guy had an opportunity to get to where they wanted to be, and they all done pretty well.
Okay. If you could tell today's Cane fan one thing about Miami's culture, we talked a little bit about this behind the scenes, you experienced, what would it be?
People talk about family,
Mm.
and
Yeah.
a lot of people talk about it, but Miami lives it.
Mm.
Miami
Yes.
lives family. I mean, I keep in touch with Melvin now. I keep in touch with players. If a player from that time, a guy, like Melvin came in with a guy named Tolbert Brown, Tolbert
Okay.
Payne rather. And if any of those guys, if they need help, if they run into a bad situation, they called me up, I'm right there to help them.
Mm.
And this is years and years later. I keep in touch with them. They meant a lot to me in my career, and I'll do anything for those guys because they laid it on the line for us.
Hey, that's awesome because you don't see family,
Not like that.
yeah, out in a lot of places, and you could tell even when guys get interviewed, you see some guys they haven't seen guys for 20, 30 years or dislike them or whatever the case might be.
Right. And that's why I say Mario is doing a stellar job. He brings guys back. It's called a Legends Camp.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just one guy after the other. You just, Irvin's there, and Bratton's there, and Hurley Brown's there, and some guys are coaching high school. You got, just one player after another.
Right. Is it true? I heard through the grapevine. I don't even know if this is true or not. That before Mario got there, was some things going on where players wasn't coming back to the campus. I don't know if it was under Manny Diaz or not.
Dwayne, there was a little stretch of time. See, that's the whole thing with, if you look at the history of the Miami Hurricanes, I'm talking about going way back. They brought in people from the Nebraska staff here when Devaney was doing good, and they brought in guys from the Nebraska staff, and they couldn't win a game here.
Mm.
The culture at Miami is totally different. You got to understand the culture of Miami. So some of the coaches that came back didn't invite guys back. They didn't want guys on the sideline. They didn't want the old guys back, and they felt alienated. The guys felt alienated, so they didn't come back. Mario wants the culture and the tradition back to show these young kids what it's like, because every team felt they owed it to the older players to carry the torch.
Mm.
And for a little while there, since 2005, this thing has not been very good since they let us go.
Yeah.
But now Mariners bringing that back. They want to show the younger players what it's like, and the demands that were put on them. They put it on the guys, but they got to do it their own way. These young guys got to make their own history, their own tradition, and their own thing. But it's good to see that, that culture. Mm-hmm. I think cultures that last a long time pass on their traditions to the younger people. I'm talking not just Miami as a football team. I'm talking about cultures, cultures that last throughout time.
Mm-hmm.
Help, the young people are given what's expected of them to carry on the traditions, and then make their own memories and things like that. And that's what Mario's doing, and he's doing a great job.
Okay. Well, the last question, this might be the toughest one of all, Coach. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
All right. Who should I have on the show next? But before you answer, you have to help me get them on the show. Who should I interview next, Coach?
Who should you interview next? There's so many guys, there's so many guys that are good, Brett Romberg. You know who's really good? The guy that won the academic Heisman is Joaquin Gonzalez.
Oh, wow.
He went to Columbus, and Mario went to Columbus too. And so did the offensive line coach, Alex Mirabal went to Columbus. And nobody really recruited Gonzalez. He wasn't recruited very highly, other than the Harvard Ivy League. But that guy understands. Ivy League schools recruited him. But I said something about that kid is good, and he became an academic Heisman Trophy winner. I mean, he was unbelievable. Great ball player, played pro ball.
Right.
Played in Cleveland for Butch. I would get him because that guy is very articulate, very smart, and understands the culture of Miami.
Okay. Well, Coach, you got to help me get them, and we'll Joaquin, if you're listening, send me a DM or something.
Okay. I'll try that. I think I have his number. I'll give it to you when the show's over. I'll give you his number and I'll call him too.
All right. I appreciate that. All right there, guys out there. Hey, I hope everybody tune in for the South Florida game. Me and Coach Soldinger are going to both be watching the game, and hopefully it's a great turnout for the game and Miami do the thing. We appreciate everybody tapping in with us. And as always, it's all about the U.
Thank you so much, Dwayne. Appreciate it.
Thank you there, Coach.